All right. Turn that off. Let's get to this. So, what I want to go through today is identifying lacking speed in the run, or identifying ways that you can improve the power output in your run, and then why you're crooked, if you're crooked. So, when it comes to running issues, I do want to generate force quite like I am running a 100, right? So one thing that I see sometimes with athletes is, sure, they are running, but sometimes you get the floaty run that does not necessarily produce much anything at all. So maybe it's the person who is very upright and they get those big pushes to start, but those big pushes don't equate to a lot of force being put out there. Let me see. Make sure I don't get any of my things in the way here. It's not a promotional thing, but drink up and hydrate. Get your fluids in. I got literally, like, with coffee, you can dehydrate yourself too. Make sure to hydrate while you caffeinate. Some girl said that. And I like that. That's a good way to put it. But when it comes to the run, I don't want to be so vertical as to reduce the horizontal speed that I'm creating, right? So we do want a lean from ourselves. I do want, in the beginning of that run, sure, I can be upright and tall, right? But when I get running, I do want a slight lean from my ankles. One way that you can get this idea, and everybody gets into this when it comes to beginning of the seasons, they go up against a fence and they are leaning up against a fence, and I am getting the switch of my feet up here, but feeling that slight lean. Funny enough, one thing I do like to do is actually, let me bring you along with me, and let me make sure I get all of this in frame. So we have that general lean to ourselves. It's a full body lean. I'm not having my rear end out, because at least this isn't going to be efficient for my legs to push through, me to be bent over. I want to be standing upright with a little lean. And then by the end, that's when I may be perfectly tall. But even in the beginning of my run, to allow for some horizontal movement, I need to have a little lean to myself. Okay? So if I'm looking at force vectors, where could we go? I want to use one of my whiteboards. Come on, dang camera, I'm trying to turn you. Happy Monday, everybody. Got some nice good sleep in me. Ready to conquer the week. But let's say this is my person running with their pole. All right, so if I want to get moving this way, sure, I want my knees up. All right, probably have had your coach say knees up. Maybe it's because your run's a shuffly run, the Kiefer shuffle, as we used to call it. Shout out to my boy Kiefer Reed. But yes, I want my knees up to help with the cycle there. But if I am only going vertical, am I really pushing myself in that? I need a better marker. If I am getting my knees up, am I really propelling myself forward? One thing I saw, at least this week, a couple people, they get to a floaty run, as I like to call it. You have time in air, which in air we have friction, we have things flow you down, but also there is this bounce, bounce, bounce type run where it's way too vertical and there isn't the continuance in getting ourselves moving forward. So there is almost this way too, not rigid, but way too vertical of a run that is not helping you to produce forward momentum, right? So I do like to think of this like a 100. So in my 100 start, especially if you have a space to do this, getting yourself in that leaned over position, get the arms split so that as I push out, I am leaning from my ankles in that push, and I am pushing that ground down in a way, therefore propelling myself forward, right? Then there comes at least a transfer into getting upright, and then I may have a better posture here in the end that begins to get taller, but in the beginning I have created speed, and then by the end I am trying to change my direction. I've already created all this forward momentum. Now it's time to jump up into it. So one way that I've at least said the way, like if it's a 5-step, 2 big pushes, transition, and then 2 steps that I will fire down in an attempt to jump up. I'm going to punch the ground in the end to get myself up. I will swipe that foot through as though I am jumping from the free throw line, slapping that foot downwards in the ground to get me vertical. But it isn't like a layup to where I want to stop at the backboard where I may have feet out in front of me, stopping myself almost like in high jump where they have that angle of a hit. Oh, to stop at that backboard, but much rather I want to continue movement on through. So, big thing is really getting something like this in our hands, a little stubby. And for that first little drive out the back, I want to push like a train engine. So train engine doesn't just rev its wheels from the beginning. I'm not tiny. I do have those big knees driving up and forward as I go. So one thing to work on here is just that ability to get a slight lean forward into myself, drive big out the back. Yes, I have my knees up, but I'm not floating. Where people get that up and down bouncy run. Who did I say it to the other day? And then let me talk about the low knees. Then there's this run where people may go low knees, and I pull myself along that ground. So I low legs, and I pull myself along, but there is no vertical aspect to it, and I'm very flat and low. So almost staying back on my hips in a seated position. Sometimes these people will be, and they stay low there, or they may be tall up or upright, and they just pull past themselves with no real knee lift and punching that ground back and away. Because in reality, when I pull those legs through here, just get it, turn around, come on around. As those knees go up, let me make this person bigger. Let's actually do this. I want to strike under myself. This is me. I want to strike down and under myself, pushing that ground back and away to then propel myself in the opposite direction. But if it's too vertical and I'm just stood up, pressing down, my result is going to be straight up with little to no x-axis here. If we're to talk about what the vectors, yes, there is a small component of x here and a lot of y, In the end, I'm going to probably more or less want less x. I'm continuing my motion forward, but I'm really trying to punish the ground and jump up into the air with that. So one analogy I like to use is how you're going to start a 100, right? So in your 1, just like these all before, in that split position, I'm going to be pushing that ground back and away, and almost wish I do have a sled. You could do that. Something to slow me down and at least show you a little bit better movement. Ooh. Come on down here. Oh. But in that beginning, I have low feet. I'm not necessarily trying to get up and reach super far out on myself. Getting those knees up, driving up under yourself. But by the end, then I may stand up, and then I'm being this very upright person. But this is still big chest. I am good postured. I'm not having a lean at the hips here and trying to run with this. That's another issue that I've seen a few people have, is they'll get a little hip hinge and they're trying to run and get things started by having this fold forward at the hips. Really want forward lean from the ankles, and I'm catching myself with each step, but that knee's up, bang. I'm putting it right up under myself, pushing that ground down and away to then propel myself that way. I don't want just up and down, up and down, up and down. That just becomes a thing where I'm not creating any horizontal movement. Cool, we're knees up. But is that run worth anything? Are you just wasting steps? Do you have 8 steps and really the first 3 I create nothing, and all the last 5 then I'm finally getting into a run? But what were those first 3 steps for? Why not just do a 6 or a 5 left, where then you're able to produce something very quickly, waste less energy, less run of everything. You don't have to do all that, but really, it's kind of simple. It's kind of simple where sometimes it's just opening your head to this can be an issue. So you may need simple little tools like this, a fence, a sled, to where I can't be this person pushing it with my rear end out, but having a general lean, and I'm a nice stiff structure to where I can translate this movement through. If I'm bent here, oh my gosh, it becomes difficultly more hard to push that sled. Bam, 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 bam. As we come up to the end, then I may be a little bit more upright with myself, but I don't necessarily want that hip hinge forward. Is your run actually giving you what you want there in the end? Big upright pushes, staying long and flat, and not even having any upwards or good postured bit about it. Because at least with the long run, the long flat run, if we stay in that, that's more or less the problem I see with it, is that those people who get that long boundy run, and not even long boundy, but long and reachy, they stay there and they aren't really they aren't really able to recover and transition into an upright jump. They stay down low like I was my senior year, and then they hit the pole very low and not necessarily on top of their hips with their body structure, where I'm able to punch down and then my body will just go up. They stay in this long, flat, pulley run, and that isn't necessarily able to translate later on to jumping up. So a big thing is just looking at posture and the way you're pushing. Is every step worth something, or are you just taking steps just to be at an 8 step? Sometimes you don't need all that run. You can produce the run that you want out of a shorter approach. And then those people who've figured it out from a short approach do exceedingly well from a long one and get higher heights and all that jazz, because they know how to translate and create off of nothing. Now all of a sudden they get the opportunity to put more in, put more drives down away from the ground to propel themselves in the opposite direction. As well as if you're floating, you may be taking up space, so you have a long run without really anything backing up the run. So I had a guy, Cooper, a couple years ago, and you know, we're going away from everything. Cooper, a couple years ago, who he was big with his run, but there wasn't much to it. He's very big, and then he'd put the feet down aggressively. He's very big and upright, so he'd float, and then he'd put all these quick feet down, but there was no substance to the run. He was literally going like 5 miles an hour in total, not Neil Wojcicki's 7 miles an hour, where he can at least produce a 17-foot jump off of that. We always joked with him about that. But Cooper at least was not creating speed throughout his first half of his run. And then in the end, he was getting nice and up into his hit, but there was no substance behind it. So in the beginning of it, he wasn't coming out of the back end of the run like he was sprinting a 100. In my 100, I have maybe 30 meters of a drive. And then I begin to work for another 30 meters the cycle speed, how quick I'm being there. And then for the last 30 to 40 meters, we are just trying not to die out in our run. Excuse me there. But I believe at least the slow runs and things of those sorts are mainly just a product of how are you starting. And so with Cooper, where I was going with him, is he had such a long run, long distances and whatnot, yet he was not producing much anything speed-wise. We all of a sudden worked to be smaller rather than this big old long stride thing, because I believe he would get, like, it was long and big, but it didn't have anything to it. So what we really did was working on pushing aggressively and consistently and quickly out the back rather than having these long floating bounds, and having a quick step to continue movement down the runway without having these halts where I'm holding up in the air and I wait for the next plant and I wait for the next plant, rather than waiting for that foot to hit, put it down quickly so I can build upon with each step creating more speed. Because at least if I got speed and it slows down, got speed, but if I'm able to push and keep accelerating in the first half of my run, then I don't have to really do much more acceleration past that in the lower half of it. And I can take up less space and produce a better run. Sometimes a long run means nothing. We took off, it might have been 8 feet or maybe a little less, because he was overstriding in the beginning there and not continually putting those feet down to consistently increase in his acceleration. So this is where I'd put in a video right now. But the main thing that I'm trying to get at is too much verticality, of still verticalness or whatever, too much float time, too much hang time in the air, then I'm not continually accelerating on top of what I've created with each step prior to. So with the 100, you often see guys with the toe drag. So with pole vaulting, that's kind of a waste to do that. But I don't necessarily want to be stupid high with everything. I may keep a lower foot. I still have that knee drive upwards. Still have that knee drive up and forward. But I'm not wasting time having this foot cast out, reaching an extra bit to then pull that ground past me. I kind of want to get pushes to start my run. Pushing out the back, push, and getting that thing started that way. When we get into the pool, that'll be the back half. Or not the back half. I've been saying the back half there. Let me say the downstream run. The ending of that run may have pulling added into, but that creation of the run will be more or less big pushes at that about 45, maybe a little higher of an angle. Obviously 45 is pretty wicked, almost being right there in my run. I don't necessarily want to be falling forward on this too much, and we may trip, but I do want a fall from the ankles, which had a person in front of me, and I'm working off of. But that's too small, was the one that I did there. So yes, I want to have big aggressive pushes, I don't want them to be so quick as to just be quick with my feet. If I look at like DK Metcalf in the football world, if I want to juke somebody, I'm very quick with my steps. And if I want to run streaks, just a straight line to the end zone, I'm going to be big, but I'm not just going to be frolicking. All big is going to be an action. Let me bring this on down here. This is kind of the better place for you to see this. But I will be as big as I could possibly be with each step without reaching out. And then quickly attacking that ground once I get to the extent of the length of my run. Come back into frame. Come on, turn towards me. Boom. Got me. Watch sprinters. Watch wide receivers when it comes to creating speed. Speed is not just quick feet. Speed is definitely not floating down the runway. This ain't no Baywatch movie. We don't need slow floating runs, but much rather a little lean forward to yourself, aggressively drive that knee up to the fullest extent of your stride length. But then I am aggressively pushing, and then I go to the fullest extent of my drive length or stride length, aggressively push, stride, aggressive, and then we get on into rest of the run. So one thing I like to say though to my athletes, again, there's like a transition phase. So you can really see with the one drill I did here over on the one I did over here on the barbell, where I start off having my lean 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And that was horribly timed up. Let me go. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Boom. That was a little bit better. So there's a point in the run after my big pushes, and it's right about halfway. So with a 5, I like to say it's that third step. With a 6, maybe it's 3 big pushes, transition, and then putting the last 2 down. The last 2 steps, last 2 lefts, last 2 rights, depending on who you are. Those ones, I like to be fully stood up by that point. I am continuing movement forward, but I am not leaning forward at the end in attempts to push any more. I've already created something. Now it's continue and get up. All right. That transition phase, you could put a shoe halfway down the runway and tell yourself, this is when I begin to raise up in my run. Rather than being so leaned forward, I get to stand up in my run. And then I'm getting a vertical jump thereafter. So what else? Because this one, it's interesting to talk about because it's very hard to articulate sometimes because it is pretty simple, and sometimes saying too much can be the issue rather than I push in like a 4-step, I push twice, stand up tall, and put everything down in order to jump. Now, you know what? Let's see if we can do this. Let me do a 4-step. That'd be a good way to go here, but I kind of want to see if I can catch my whole jump. I know. Stop going to, you're wobbling, wobbly, wobbly, wobbly. But like I said, oftentimes this becomes a very easy thing to do, but it's given a little bit of time to it to actually solidify what we want. I don't know why I'm not using my hands. So let's see, probably around 40 something. Let me hold 9.6, a little low grip, and then let's see if you can catch me. So in the beginning of this, 2 leaning forward from those ankles, 2 big strides, 2 big pushes with aggressively putting those feet down. And then the last 2, I'll stand more upright and putting those feet down under myself still. It's always down under yourself. I may, though, have a little bit more of a pulling action as I begin to open up that extra bit of my run. There is the push, but then you'll see even sprinters, that foot becomes, it comes to fall out a little bit, stride or to lengthen out and cast out a little, but then they pull up under themselves. So now I'm using my hamstrings as well as my quads, not just a quad dominant thing, but definitely in the beginning, quad, glute, pusher dominant, and the pulling muscles may come into play then after. But with the vault in mind, sitting back, what I get. And 1, 2, 3, hey! How much did we get? Not too much. You get like the last little bit. None at all. Oh yes, you lost me. Let me go even a little further down here. Let me move this sled out the way. That. I was going to go over crookedness too here in a sec, because there's a few things that kind of lead to that. And usually I'll film from behind to kind of show you this one. But a 4-step, it's pretty easy to map all this out. Or even a 5, because you can have that transition phase. This is right after those 2 big pushes. I stand up and I get ready to jump. There's not really a transition phase to where I stand up in between and kind of get into a more postured position by the end. So at least with this, it just goes straight from push forward to stand up and go. So with my 4-step, big push, and stand up and pop. Now I'm putting that foot down under myself by the end to get myself a little more vertical rather than staying super horizontal. I've already created the speed. I don't need more horizontal. Now in the last 2 steps, I want to be putting it down under myself to get up into. Big picture thing is not floating in the beginning of my run and giving the run a whole bunch of nothing. If those steps are floating, it is a waste of step and you are not producing anything more in your run. I could easily do this whole that I barely get into the pit because there's nothing to that run. There's no vertical aspect to help me stand this pole up. By the time I jump, I have a force vector going up, but I got F all going this way. And so to be expected is a jump that's going to just stand poles up and never really drive big poles in. Okay, so first half of my TED Talk today is mainly all about the pushing and making sure that every step is worth something rather than just having steps and not creating anything. Simple enough. Simple enough. All right. Now I want to go through crookedness. So this pole is in your way. Okay. A good amount of people, they'll swing legs around. And so that's creating some sort of spin. And it can come from multiple different sources, or you lead yourself to the left. It's also another one. And this is going to be a fun one to actually try and make bad, because I'm going to try and give you examples of what's bad. And that's actually going to be hard to create because, you know, so good. But nonetheless, what I'm going to try to do here, I'm going to have my hands straight up, yet I am crooked to the pole. Therefore, my legs, when they stiffen up with my upper body, I should be out to the side and then swing around. This is what I'm going to try to do. So, hold on here. I'm going to have to confuse my phone here. And yeah, keep searching for the body. Pivo. Let's move that there. Okay. Let's see if I can purposefully be bad. And 1, 2. Now, with that, if you could imagine, if I have my right arm straight up, my legs even wanted to curl a little bit around, and therefore, I'm going to continue to spin that way. Make sense there? Right, now, it's another one. I'm trying to juke you out. Oh, gotcha. Anybody been watching football this weekend? That was a pretty awesome wild card weekend. Oh, I got to take off my sweatshirt. I'm getting a little warm. Living in Maryland here. Everybody's real happy about Commanders and Ravens. That was a heck of a game. Did you see? Oh, my gosh. The kicker, Gonzalez for the Commanders. If you notice any, or did you notice how nervous he was going up to that kick? Put his helmet on. And checks, huh? That was almost like a nervous tick there. And you could tell he was going through it. But he doinks it off the field goal post. It goes on in for the win. Oh, I just love it. I'm not a Commanders fan, nor am I a Ravens fan. I'm a Patriots fan. Unfortunately, this year it's a little rough. But it's always good to see hometown teams doing good. Oh, let me scoot on by. All right. So with that one, my right hand was straight up and my body was crooked to it. And therefore, you know what? Let me get a better representation. I'll swing with this. So let me get right hand up, me crooked, and then we get the swing around. Okay? I just want to show you at least the result of all that. And you get, I'm straight up, yet the arms out to the side. That'll be the next one. Don't be following me. Go back there. I wonder, I have a remote for this. I wonder if I can control where it goes. Or do I just take it off of tracking my body? That might be another way. Let me do that. Track body, face. Yeah, let's do that. So it's not tracking anything now. And then, whatever. This remote. Trying to see if this remote works for anything. Probably not. So now, let me get my arms out to the side. but my body is straight up. So this, oh, don't try this at home, kids. Just try and do it right. This is probably going to be a fun one for my shoulder. So, oh, I'm off one step. Hold on a sec. I just guessed the spot. It was not the right spot. I'm a little too far back. Okay. Let me go 29. Because I'm not necessarily bringing in all my speed here. Because I don't necessarily want to put my shoulder in a bad place. But, okay. So, my head's straight up. Yeah, my arms are out to the side. Now I'm going to swing on it. And the thing is, any which way that we are not straight up with the pole, we're going to cause ourselves swing around. Oh, come on here. So, let's say pole's straight up and I'm swinging crooked. We swing around. If pole's to the side, yet I swing straight up, we swing around. Okay? Or, oh, son of a gun. Or you lead yourself far to the left, and then we follow it far to the left, then we jump far to the left. But what other ways are there crookedness? I feel like there's another one. Oh, yes, and then there's off to the side. So let me do right hand off to the side, top hand off to the side, and 1, 2. Oh, dang it. I'm too good at correcting it. I just literally put it forward. But you can see I'm far off to the right. So right from the beginning, you put this here, and it will, not being straight up, this is straight up, it being off to the side, it will continue in that direction, if not get worse as you swing up, because me swinging up drags things down. If I have a bend in the pole, you will put a bigger bend in it by swinging aggressively. If I'm out over here and I swing hard through the bottom, this will get pulled down this way, and it will increase the amount that we go off to the side. Funny enough, I just push it forward to my crossbody connection going over to my left leg, and then I kind of corrected a little bit of it, but I was still far off to the right. And then you also have pulling will also throw you a little bit further to the right as it pulls the pole down over here. Make sense? So, okay, I have pole is out to the right, or pole is up the middle and I'm leaning off to the left. Now you also have jumping off on the right-hand side of the runway, okay? So if I'm jumping off to the right, yet straight up. So being over here, that pole is still leaned over to the side. And then as I want to go straight on through, everything will stay over here. And you'll have a pole in your way as you want to get up. I want to be able to hit that pole in the middle. I slide past it on the right, and I work up. But the pole is staying up the middle. Right when it stays over here, maybe I pull over to the side, or I set it up off to the side. Pole gets in your way, and you actually swing up into it, and then not be able to really continue any movement because you've blocked yourself off in a different way than we say blocking out. But you've blocked yourself off from continuing rotation because you put that pole in front of yourself rather than I get in front for the plant and I get it moving a little off to my left in order to do whatever I want on the right. So we have hands off to the right, hands up the middle, that I'm off to the left, Now I'm going to go for one where I am off to the right. This is probably going to be the most difficult because I like to just jump down the middle. It's simple enough. My foot goes smack down the middle just because. All right, so I'm going to stand all the way on the right side of the runway to make this happen. And we'll see. Whoa, okay. I don't like that. That's sketchy. But that is exactly what happens to a good bit of the people in the beginning as they hopefully try and like avoid the pole. They don't want to run into the pole. Yet that's exactly what we do want. I want to jump directly onto the pole. I don't want to jump around this thing. You know what I'm saying? So people get out to the side, maybe their hands straight up. Now I'm leaning in some fashion, going to swing around crooked, or at least with that, I jumped off to the side there, and then it literally kept pulling me over that way because I've already created this movement off to the side of it, and you don't ever get to stand the pole up, but much rather it's going to take this path and just keep leading you off to the right further and further. The more you swing, the more we pull upon it, everything's going to go over that way. All right. Now, crooked there, crooked here, even though I'm down the middle, off to the side, or straight up and me leaning off to the side on that one. And that's more like, I see mostly that's like a high jump step. People be running down the middle and maybe they like either cross over too much. This was one kid this week, but I've also seen it where they go down the middle and then right at the last step, they step off to the right, almost like a high jump step. Into where what I told him was, before you get to jumping, visualize left, right up under yourself, left, right, left, being right up under my body, right down the middle, and at least giving yourself a visual representation of how it should look and whatnot there. So, off the side there, and then moving a little too much off to that side. That's another crooked aspect. Okay. So then there's an overplanting and pushing the pole far to your left. So with that, let me get a little higher grip just to have this one. Now I'm going to put the pole forcibly on my left rather than in front of myself, and I'll overplant. So look a little bit like, and then I get to crooked swing as well. And I feel this happens because that person is trying to force themselves on the right side of the pole and the pole on their left because they know this is what it should be in the end. Yeah. So they want to start this way rather than right up the middle. And then at the end point, or as I swing, I may move the pole around myself, but I don't want to necessarily get to setting this up far off to the left to where I swing with it to the left. All right. Whoa, Dr. V's pulling in. So last thing I want to do is just go through one simple drill that I like to do for the sake of maintaining straightness. So put the pole in the box, and these are quite like rollovers on the ground to where all I'm trying to do is stay in line with the pole rather than, let me get this a little turned to make sure we're getting it all. What up, Dr. V? I'm recording a video right now. I'm just right at the end, so you feel free to get in your warm up and all that. And then, right on. Oh, you good. You good. Let me get through this. So what I like to do, standing here at the crack, hands up right above our head, take 2 steps back, and there's just a crack right on the pit to where I can get my takeoff right there. That's really all I'm talking about with that. But take 2 steps back and getting that pole in the way of yourself, right up the middle. My hands are contacting this straight up the middle. My right knee's on the right side. I'm not necessarily jumping to the right, having my hands right up outside, but I'm getting everything going down the middle of the pit and staying nice, tight, and close. Imagining though we're a fireman's pole and I'm jumping onto that. I don't necessarily want to jump to the side of it. I want to jump directly on it, right? But you also have to set up your hands directly in front of you, as well as propelling ourselves upwards. So you're right here, 1, 2, and then I drive upwards down the middle. I'm not reaching for the pit. I'm not having myself turn off straight up, but I drive straight up and I just wait for the pit to come to me. We don't need ourselves to come to the side and try and land. I try and jump on the pole, and I just so happen to land on the pit. This is an easy way to isolate all this without having to do the run, and then you can figure out why you yourself are super crooked. Easy way to isolate that. Other than that, number 2. Peace.